Hello and welcome. Now, I know it's been a minute since I have made a video, but I am here waiting for my son and my grandson to finish up what they needed to take care of, because I had to take them over here to make sure that they get done what they need to get done. As you can see, my grandson's seat is in the back. So I thought, hey, this would be a good time to make a video. And if you are here for the very first time, I want to say welcome. I am a proud 51-year-old mother and grandmother, and this is my podcast, Sacred Time. My name is Carlita, and my videos can be in my car, maybe sometime in my house, maybe sometime in the park. It's wherever I find the need to, sit down and talk. So right now, I'm out in the parking lot making a video while I wait. Now, I wanted to say this. This is kind of going to be a story time that I'm coming to you all with. I've had a lot of things going on since the last time I made a video. And as of recently, last week, I was in the store and I happened to see my former sister-in-law. And she told me that my former mother-in-law had passed away, and she said the funeral was the next day, which was Juneteenth. And I decided, she told me all the details, told me what time it was going to be, the address of the place. So I told her that I was gonna go. Now, I had no idea how I was going to be received. Had no idea what I was going to experience once I went there. And just to give you all a backstory, the reason why I got divorced from my husband, he was a narcissist. He was emotionally, verbally, financially, mentally, and was a few seconds away from being physically abusive. And I decided, let me turn this heat up a little bit because it's getting a little bit chilly in here. I decided that it was time for me to leave after we had already been married for 7 years. He's not my son's father. I had my son in my early 20s, way before I met my ex-husband. My son was 16 years old when we got married. And I decided that I was tired of, and then also, if you know about anything about narcissists, they love to lie too. And I got tired of that as well. So that was all that I was going through in my marriage. And I decided that it was time for me to go. So, long story short, getting back to the funeral, I had no idea what I was going to encounter when I went to that funeral. So, it was at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I decided that I was going to try to get there early to view my former mother-in-law's body, say my hellos to whoever I need to say hello to, and leave. I wasn't going to stay the whole entire time. It wound up being where I came in. My former sister-in-law was not there yet, but it was some other family members of their family that were there. Some I remembered, some I couldn't remember their names. Some of them I didn't remember everything about them, but I did remember some of the family members who were there. Came in, and when I came in, I went up towards the front, and I saw my former mother-in-law's, her sister, her older sister, one of her older sisters was there. So I came and I said hello to her, and she didn't remember me, which was okay, because me and my ex-husband had been divorced for a few years now, and so she didn't remember me, and I didn't go. We only went to like certain events sometimes, so, and it was okay. It was okay. I didn't get upset about the fact that she didn't remember me. I had another aunt of his that remembered me very well, but I didn't see her there for whatever reason. I don't know if she's passed already or what happened with that other aunt. So I went and I said hello to this aunt, and some of his cousins were also there. So I said hello to them, and I reintroduced myself to this aunt and told her who I was, that I was so-and-so's ex-wife. And she said, oh, okay. She said it was nice to meet you. And then I went over and viewed my former mother-in-law's body. They did a great job on her body. Whoever the funeral home who did her body, they did a great job, because she looked like she did in life. And the wig that they got for her was very pretty. And it reminded me of my grandmother's funeral. If some of you watched the videos few months back, my grandmother had passed a few months ago, and they did a great job on my grandmother's body as well. So then I went around and said hello to my former stepdaughter, my oldest stepdaughter. And me and her had talked sometime on TikTok like a few months ago, and she was wondering what happened, and I told her everything that had gone on, and she was sympathetic towards it. Then my former stepsons, they came in with their wives, because both of them were married, and I hugged them. And then I sat down, but before I sat down, my former oldest stepdaughter, she introduced me to her mother, because she has a different mother than they have. And she introduced me to her mother, and her mother came over and gave me a hug, which I thought was sweet of her. And then I went and I sat down. And then my ex-husband's uncles on his father's side, came over, and it was happy to see me, was like, hey, how you doing? And I hugged him. And then I also hugged my ex-husband's, his cousin on his father's side. I hugged him as well. And I sat down in front of them for a little while. But then when I saw some other family members starting to pile in, I moved to the wall, because they had seating on the wall. And I sat there. And then his youngest daughter, I said hello to her mother. And then I tried to say hello to my former youngest stepdaughter who was in there, but she didn't really say too much. So I said okay. So then I sat down by the wall, and my former oldest stepdaughter's mother came and sat by me, and we talked a little bit. And we talked about how we talked about different things, and my youngest stepdaughter came over, and I went and I said to her, I said, "Do you remember me?" She said, "Yeah, I remember you," with a nasty attitude. And me and her were close when she was younger and when I was married to my ex-husband. And I knew at that point that the way she responded to me and the way my former stepsons responded to me when they hugged me, that my former husband had said something to them. Now, what he said to them, I have no idea. But if you know anything about narcissists will gather up their flying monkeys. And flying monkeys are the term they use in the narcissism world, where they have certain people that they gather up and they will tell different things about you. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. A lot of times it's a lie that they'll gather up and say things about you. So eventually, I saw my former sister-in-law come in and I hugged her. And also, my former husband, my ex-husband, came in. When he saw me, he looked over at me like he had seen a ghost. And I was still sitting down. He came over after talking to a few people, came over and said hello to me. When he said hello to me, he shook my hand. I guess at some point he thought I was going to stand up and hug him. I was not going to hug this man at all, because when I saw him, I realized that I felt nothing towards him at all. Nothing. That's how much healing I have done since my divorce. Then he went through and he hugged everybody else. And then I heard the announcer say that they were going to get ready to start the service. So I said, okay. I knew it was that time that I needed to make my exit. And I went over to, I didn't want to go to my former sister-in-law because I would have had to pass my ex-husband in order to say my goodbyes to her. So I didn't say goodbye to her, but I did say goodbye to my former oldest daughter-in-law, oldest stepdaughter, and I said my goodbye to her because I still have a good relationship with her. And that night I did talk to her on the phone, and we had a good conversation. Sorry about that, my nose is itching. We had a good conversation. But I'm saying all of this to say this, that once I left, I made a decision to leave my ex-husband, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. How I left is that I remember it clearly. It was January 2021, still during COVID. I had already got a storage already. And I'm telling you this because I'm telling any woman or any man who is dealing with a narcissist on how to deal and leave the situation. Now, before that, I had gone through, let me see what time it is, because I want to make sure that I'm not, I had gone through and I had gotten a storage unit. I'm telling you this because whoever is going through dealing with a narcissist, I want to tell you how to leave. And leave where for your safety. I had gotten a storage unit. And when I got a storage unit, I had got it months ahead of time. And I had steadily been paying on it. Or probably a month ahead of time. But I had set a date and a time. And I knew that when I left, I had so much time in order for me to leave. By this time, my son had already left because him and my ex-husband had gotten into it, and I had my father come and get him. But I had gotten a storage unit, and it was on Martin Luther King's birthday. I knew my ex-husband, was going to be at work that day because the type of job that he did, he was going to be at work that day. I had already got a storage unit. I had already made up in my mind that I was going to get out of this situation. And what I did is that I had my father come over and help me. Nobody was at home that day because at that time, my 2 stepsons were living with me. And when my husband left that morning, I quickly left. I quickly gathered up everything that I owned in that house and piled up my car as much as I could. And then I also had my father come over and piled up his car as much as he could. And I quickly left that day because I knew I had so many hours to get up out of there. Now, I'm going to tell you this. My ex-husband was a special police officer. And I knew that he kept a gun in that house. And I knew that because of that, I also had to make sure that for my safety, I got out of that house as quickly as possible. So I took my stuff to the storage unit and I got up out of that house. Now, and I had to go back because I had 2 cars that were, let me stop this. Okay. I had 2 cars that were in my name. They were already paid off already. And I was trying to figure out how I could get them. And I had already called my cousin's husband to come and get those cars. So by the time I got back, unfortunately for me, my ex-husband was already back. I had already gotten all my stuff from out of there, except for those 2 cars. And when he realized those cars were about to be towed off, we both called the police. I called the police, he called the police. Because I was going to make sure that I got those cars away from there. And I can tell this story now because I'm out of that situation and I've been healed. So, as a result, the police officers came. They took us both separately and told me and him, well, they told me that because we had purchased the cars while we were still married, I couldn't take the cars because the state that I live in is considered as marital property. Of course, I was pissed. I was mad. I was angry. But I knew I had to go through this. So I said, okay. So I went and hired an attorney. While I'm going through all of this, I went and hired an attorney. And I also started going to domestic violence and free domestic violence group program in order for me to start healing. And I also signed up with the House of Ruth. The House of Ruth also deals with domestic violence too. And I had, because it was COVID, I had a one-on-one with a therapist. And the group sessions that I went through as well, while I was going through all of this, I had to wear a mask because since it was COVID, we had to all still wear masks. And it was a lot of stuff that I was going weekly through the domestic violence group sessions, and I was having my therapy one-on-one online. I went through that through several weeks, and also was paying an attorney to try to get this divorce taken care of. And I had no idea how this was going to work out. The attorney hired a private investigator, and the private investigator was couldn't find my ex-husband because apparently he had left where because we were renting a house and he had left. And I was just like, how in the world am I going to get this divorce? And I'm still attending therapy and going through all of that, still working and still trying to heal through all of that. It was a lot that I had to go through. But I was determined that no matter what, I was going to get through this and I was going to heal. And at the same time, I'm living with my parents as a grown adult. And my parents were there. My son was there. This was before my son had my grandson. I had an aunt that was living there in the house. So I'm dealing with my family living there. And also healing at the same time. So eventually, going through this whole situation with my ex-husband, and eventually, at some point, because where I'm at, you have to be separated. Where I live at, you have to be separated for a whole year before you can finalize your divorce. I had a court papers go through, and they were saying, the courts were like, we can't find him. Eventually, and my attorney, it was just like, I couldn't even find my attorney at some point. I can't remember what happened. He got ghost on me. And I was just like, how am I going to get through this divorce? Because I'm trying to be done with this man. Next thing I know, I saw papers in the mail where my ex-husband had to file divorce. I guess he realized that I wasn't coming back. So he filed a divorce. I got the paperwork. I went to the courthouse. And when I went to the courthouse to do all of that, within a couple months after that, this was in the summertime, we finally, and I remember it like it was yesterday, because by this time I had already moved into my own place. I had gotten an apartment in the area that I wanted to move into, and because I knew it was time for me to move out my parents' my parents' house. And I had gotten an apartment in an area I wanted to move into. And when I got that apartment, it was like a relief. But then the judge, I had a video tape conference. This was July 2023. And I finally saw my ex-husband again for the first time through videotape, because we were going through the end of COVID. And I was just like, finally, I'm getting my divorce. And I was so grateful. The judge asked both of us all these questions that they have to ask. And he finally finalized the divorce and said the paperwork was going to be sent in the mail. Whew, that was like the best. I mean, it was like, thank you, God. Finally, I am getting this man from out of my life. It was like a breath of fresh air. Now, of course, a month after I got divorced, my ex-husband decided that, because, mind you, the two vehicles still were in my name. He decided to pop up at my mother's house. I wasn't living there anymore. He didn't know where I was at. Unfortunately, my mother slipped up and told him the city I was living in, but he still didn't know completely where I was at, because I still was not using the address of where I was living at. And I purposely did that, and I still do that to this day for my own safety and protection. So, he was trying to find a title and everything. But before that happened, this is a funny thing. And this is how God will work things out when you don't even know how it worked out. I went to the NBA trying to figure out if he still had my information. This was months before I got my divorce. If he still had the trucks. They told me that nothing was in my name anymore. That those trucks that truck and that car were not in my name anymore. Apparently, he had gone up to the NBA and got all of that stuff situated. And I knew it had to be nothing but God. That's why I'm grateful and I'm thankful. Because if not, it would have been a whole disaster that went on with that whole situation. So, fast forward to today. I have been divorced since July of 2023. Now, whoever is going through, whatever you're going through, being with a narcissist, whether you are male or female, because there are female narcissists and there are male narcissists. I want you to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. When you get out of that narcissistic situation, you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay in that situation. I may not be where I want to be at completely in life, but I am not where I was. I'm not with a narcissist. And I have done the healing. I have gone through therapy and group therapy and one-on-one therapy. And even after my therapy stopped, I still had some more healing to do. But I'm not where I was. And I am grateful every single day that I got out of that situation. And I want you to know that if you're going through that, you can get out of that situation. Now, how you get out of that situation? Everybody's journey of leaving a narcissist is different. But you can get out of that situation, and you can get out of that situation even safely. There's even programs where domestic violence situations, where group homes, where they will have somebody, and I will tell you this because I've been in another situation where I had to get out of that, where they will sit up there and they will have somebody come and get you, where when you feel like it's safe, come and get you and take you to a domestic violence home where nobody knows where you're at and you can feel safe there. Now, at the end of this, in my description, I'm going to put the number for the domestic violence hotline, because I don't know who it'll help, but you can anonymously call and ask them questions and tell them your situation, and you can get out of the situation that you're in. And like I said, narcissism is not just for women, but men deal with it too. On that note, I'm going to say be blessed and take care. And if you find value in any of my videos, please like and subscribe if you stayed this long. Hopefully you did. And be blessed.